We need to start.
All right.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Rafael Nabizade, and I'm an Azerbaijani student doing a master's degree in Security and Diplomacy program at Tel Aviv University. Today, today as part of the Irwin Cotler Fellowship Program, myself, Aryo Brahmantyo, my dear classmate, and Rachel Avraham will speak about anti-Semitism and Holocaust. We are going to give a speech to the students of the law faculty and the Faculty of Geography of the Baku State University. So on 27th of January of 2022, there was an event in the capital city of Azerbaijan. I just need to share a screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Aryo, can you confirm, please?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. As you see in the picture, on 27th of January, there was an event in the capital city of Azerbaijan, Baku to be precise, which was organized both by the United Nations office in Baku and the Embassy of Israel in Baku. The event took place at ADA University, which is considered as the top university in Azerbaijan. And I had a unique opportunity to listen to the story of the Holocaust survivor, Mr. Lev Schwartz. I have his picture here, who is originally from Ukraine, but lives today in Baku. Mr. Lev Schwartz told us the story of his small community of about 3,000 Jews, which was completely destroyed by Nazi Germany. His family faced the horror of the Holocaust, but miraculously escaped from death. Holocaust is the greatest crime of man against man in recorded history. The scale of Holocaust is overwhelming. In the 9/11 terror attack in 2001 in New York, 3,000 people were killed, and it changed the world. During the Holocaust, an average of 3,000 Jews were killed every day for 5.5 years. In January of 2022, the United Nations adopted a resolution against Holocaust denial. A total of 114 states co-sponsored the resolution, which was adopted by consensus, and Azerbaijan was one of the co-sponsors. Only one country in the world, in the entire world, opposed the resolution, the Islamic Republic of Iran. The UN resolution reaffirms that the remembrance of the Holocaust is key to preventing further acts of genocide. And it recalls that ignoring such historical facts increases the risk of them reoccurring once again. So if anyone wonders where such atrocities might reoccur or who may instigate this, now you know where to look. Iran denies the Holocaust while openly fantasizing about a second Holocaust. The Nazis wished to annihilate the Jewish race. Iran wished to annihilate the Jewish state. Different framing, same hate. So what is the Holocaust? In the course of the Second World War, the Nazis murdered nearly 6 million European Jews. And I discussed this topic with the chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Azerbaijan, Rabbi Shneur Sogol. Rachel, you have probably met with him. So this genocide is called the Holocaust, and 1/3 of Jews were murdered in the Holocaust, 6 out of 18 million. Those were predominantly Eastern European Jews. Here we have the picture of the ambassador of Israel to Azerbaijan, George Dick, giving a speech. I'd like to also clarify the difference between Shoah and Holocaust. The word Holocaust comes from ancient Greek and means burnt offering. Even before the Second World War, the word was sometimes used to describe the death of a large group of people, but since 1945, it has become almost synonymous with the murder of European Jews during the Second World War. That's why we use the term Holocaust. Jews also refer to it, the word Shoah, which is Hebrew for catastrophe. Causes of the Holocaust. So the Holocaust has a number of causes. Its direct cause is the fact that the Nazis wanted to exterminate the Jews, and that they were able to do so. But their lust for murder didn't come out of nowhere. The anti-Semitic Nazi ideology must be considered in the broader context of the age-old hostility towards Jews, modern racism, and nationalism. Jews in Europe have been discriminated against and persecuted for hundreds of years. often for religious reasons. For a start, they were held responsible for the death of Christ, that the Jews killed Christ. In the Middle Age, they were often made to live outside of the community in separate neighborhoods or ghettos and were excluded from some professions. In times of unrest, Jews were often singled out as scapegoats. After the assassination of the Tsar Alexander II in 1881 in Russia, there were outbreaks of violence in which Jews were mistreated or murdered. Pogroms. There were pogroms. The idea arose that Jews belonged to a different race and were therefore not part of the people or the nation. In 1918, Germany lost the First World War. Right-wing extremists in Germany blamed the Jews. They also accused the Jews of being capitalist exploiters who profited at the expense of others. At the same time, the Jews were accused of being followers of communism who were after world domination by means of a revolution. Expelling the Jews from Germany. Between 1933 and 1939, the Nazis made life in Germany increasingly impossible for the Jews. Jews fell victim to discrimination, exclusion, robbery, and violence. The Nazis sometimes killed the Jews, but not systematically or with the intention of killing all Jews. At that point, the main goal of the Nazis was to remove the Jews from Germany by allowing them to emigrate. To encourage them to do so, they took away their livelihoods. Jews were no longer allowed to work in certain professions. They were no longer allowed in some pubs or public parks. In 1935, the Nuremberg racial laws came into force. Jews were forbidden to marry non-Jews. They also lost their citizenship, and they became second-class citizens with fewer rights than non-Jews. In 1938, the Nazis organized pogroms all over Germany. The Kristallnacht. So you can see that in the picture, Kristallnacht or Kristallnacht. Jews' houses, synagogues, and shops were destroyed, and thousands of Jewish people were imprisoned in concentration camps. When the war broke out in September 1939, about 250,000 Jews fled Germany because of the violence and discrimination. Deportations from all over Europe to Auschwitz. In the middle of 1942, the Germans began deporting Jews from the occupied territories in Western Europe. The decision-making process and dynamics differed from one country to the next, as did the numbers of victims. 104,000 Jews were deported from the Netherlands. In Belgium and France, the numbers were relatively and absolutely lower. There are several reasons for this difference. The Jews were crammed in overcrowded cattle wagons, as you see in the picture, and transported to Eastern Europe. Most of them ended up at Auschwitz-Birkenau, but there were other concentration or extermination camps. Out of the 101,000 Dutch Jews who were murdered, 34,000 were killed in Sobibor. Auschwitz-Birkenau was both a labor camp and an extermination camp. And so upon arrival, the Jews were selected according to their age, health, and ability to work. Those who were not fit enough were gassed immediately in the gas chambers. The others had to do forced labor under barbaric conditions. The work was extremely hard. The little food was of poor quality, hygiene was poor, and Jews were often maltreated. This program is therefore also referred to as extermination through labor. Jews were brought in from other occupied parts of Europe. In 1943 and 1944, deportation started from the occupied regions in Italy, Hungary, Greece, and the Balkans. Only when the Allies were drawing near, by the end of 1944, did the persecution of the Jews slowly come to a halt. In the last months of the war, thousands of Jews and other prisoners died during the death march after the Germans had evacuated the concentration camps to prevent the prisoners from falling into the hands of the Allied troops. Even after the liberation, people still died of malnutrition, disease, and exhaustion. In addition, I have to mention that Azerbaijan, 300,000 Azerbaijanis out of 600,000 fell on the battlefield. They didn't return home. And Azerbaijan was one of the few countries where the Jewish people found a shelter. A lot of Eastern European Jews found a shelter in my homeland, and most of them stayed in Azerbaijan. They didn't go back to Europe, to America, or even to the land of Israel. They stayed in Azerbaijan. And as I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, Mr. Lev Schwartz is one of them. Thank you so much. And now I'm giving the floor to my classmate, Aryo Brahmantyo. You're welcome.
Thank you, Rafael. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and shalom. Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to first thank my friends Rafael and Rachel for having me today. I'm extremely grateful and honored for the opportunity. I would also like to greet our audiences in Azerbaijan. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, and I wish that I can visit the beautiful country of Azerbaijan in the future. Today, I would like to discuss about Holocaust education in other Muslim majority country with Indonesia as a case study. As we may have already known, Azerbaijan and Israel has already good friendly relations over the years. And my friend Rafael told me that Azerbaijan had just recently opened an embassy in Israel. Such close relations enable transfer of knowledge and Holocaust education to be shared more effectively. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for other Muslim majority countries in other parts of the world. I take an example of my own country of origin as an example, Indonesia. In 2022, last year, a Holocaust museum was opened in Indonesia. It was the first Holocaust museum in the country, and it was established by an Indonesian Jew, Rabbi Yaakov Baruch, at the island of North Sulawesi in Indonesia. It is also part of Shar HaShmayim Synagogue. Rabbi Yaakov Baruch built the museum at his own expense to remind the people of the tragic history of the Holocaust, in which some members of his family perished during that period. However, the museum would later become a source of controversy in the Indonesian society due to the existing challenges that we would be discussing. Next slide, please. The challenges of implementing Holocaust education in many Muslim majority countries are follows. First, there's no shared history of World War II. Since countries like Indonesia had never experienced Nazi oppression in the past, it is difficult for people to relate to the history of the Holocaust, and it sees no urgency to learn about it. We should also remind ourselves that Indonesia is geographically located very far away from Europe and Israel. Unlike Azerbaijan, that are geographically close and few hours away by flight, Indonesia is much further away. The subsequent result of this situation is lack of interaction between the Indonesian people and the Jews in general. Lack of interaction leads to lack of interest in learning many aspects about Jewish society, including the history of the Holocaust. There's also the problem of language barrier. As English is not the native tongue for many Indonesian, they can't understand the information that are contained in the materials of Holocaust education, which are mostly foreign in origin. They can only rely on local sources that are often biased, inaccurate, and lacking in detail. I should also mention that Judaism is not officially recognized religion in Indonesia due to very minor Jewish presence and influence in the country. This reality further decreases the interest in Holocaust education and its effectiveness. More significant challenges comes from the lack of interfaith dialogue with Jewish community in Indonesia. Next slide, please.
Yes.
And suspicions and prejudice against the Jews. Since they are a very small minority in Indonesia, many people in general are not accustomed to the behavior of the Jews. So people tend to be afraid and suspicious of them. Their sense of uneasiness derives from many misconceptions and misunderstanding they have about the Jews. They are often misled by biased and unreliable sources, which are often produced and distributed by anti-Semitic people. This phenomenon makes Jews less favorable in the eyes of Indonesian public. For instance, many people can still differentiate between Judaism and Zionism. the term Zionists are seen in very negative manner. They believe that having Holocaust education means that it's supporting Israel against Palestine, when in actuality, Holocaust took place before Israel was even established. It was a humanitarian disaster for the whole world. It does not necessarily have anything to do with Israel. Some of them even go as far as believing that Holocaust did not actually exist. They're some kind of Holocaust deniers, but they also believe that Holocaust is part of a conspiracy theory. The extent of the false information can sometimes be outright ridiculous. Unfortunately, yet again, efforts to correct such discourses are even made difficult due to the fact that Israel and Indonesia don't have diplomatic relation. So it limit the flow of information, freedom of travel between citizens, and it's hard to make direct consultation about Holocaust education with notable universities and institutions in Israel that are expert in this field. In the face of such situation, next slide, please.
Yes.
In the face of such situation, I recommend certain possible solutions. First, we need to create interest for young and foreign audiences to be familiar with the history of the Holocaust through creative work of art. This can be done through movies, comics, and music. Here are the examples of the comics of Mouse. They are comics about Holocaust, but they are depicted in cartoonish so that they would be much more friendlier and susceptible to younger audiences. There's also movies about Hollywood movies like Schindler's List and documentaries such as the Auschwitz. We can also have movie screening about Holocaust and discuss the lesson we learn about the Holocaust from that movie. As many people these days often turn to social media, we can also collaborate with notable influencers to promote Holocaust education. We can also even issue special visa to invite students, scholars, and notable figures from many Muslim countries to study Holocaust education and have interfaith dialogues. Last but not least, we can also encourage citizens of other nationalities to promote Holocaust education by issuing medals and awards to those who actively support and contributed in their own countries. As you can see, many Muslim majority countries are still having difficulty in having Holocaust education, and steps have to be taken to improve that situation, including combating anti-Semitism. And on that note, I conclude my part of the presentation. And I would like to hand the floor to my friend Rachel, who would be discussing about anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was recently reported that a group of students at the University of California at Santa Cruz gathered to celebrate Hitler's birthday. It's very similar to what you guys tried to address related to Holocaust education. These people who clearly are ignorant, they sang happy birthday and ate cakes adorned with hateful and horrific symbols. UC Santa Cruz Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Akira Bradley Armstrong, said in a statement. This incident, as we speak, is being investigated as a hate crime by the local police department. This comes less than a month after the Anti-Defamation League reported that anti-Semitic incidents in the United States reached their highest level last year, with incidents including assault, vandalism, and harassment increasing by more than a third and reaching nearly 3,700 cases in 2022. One must ask, what has happened to the land of the free and the home of the brave, the land where the Statue of Liberty resides, for the plight of Jews to turn so dire in what was a country that was once referred by Abba Eban as the Golden Medina for Jews? Of course, anti-Semitism always existed in American society, contrary to the stereotype. When my mother was a child living in the Jim Crow South, she was haunted by signs that said no dogs, no blacks, and no Jews in many country clubs and swimming pools. My great uncle Harold, who served in the U.S. military during World War II, used to despise guarding Nazi war criminals in the South during his military service because he claimed many of the Southern Americans were almost as anti-Semitic at that time as the Nazis he had to guard. My great uncle Harold suffered greatly in the Jim Crow South due to the high level of anti-Semitism there. He was one of two Jews in his unit, and the non-Jewish soldiers used to torment and beat them. But when I was growing up as a child in Rockville, Maryland, America was not such a bad place for Jewish people. I was born in 1986 and came of age under the presidencies of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush Jr. At that time, Jim Crow was ancient history, but the hatred that permeated American society, first under Barack Obama and later on under Donald Trump, did not yet occur. This was before white supremacists came out of the conflict closet and Antifa became a household name. However, even then, anti-Semitism did exist. When I was in middle school, anti-Semites tried to assault me, calling me a Jewish bitch, and yelled, "Why don't you burn something?" in reference to the Holocaust. A local teacher tried to intervene, and she ended up with her arm in a cast for the next 6 months. Yet what I experienced was the exception rather than a rule because I was in a boarding school in a backwards area of the state of Maryland in what they call redneck country. For most young American middle school kids at that time, receiving such hatred in suburban and urban areas in American cities was unheard of. However, anti-Semitism existed even then on university campuses. I started my freshman year of college in 2004, studying for 2 years at Randolph-Macon's Women's College before transferring into the University of Maryland at College Park. The college was located in Lynchburg, Virginia, with the name of a town that speaks for itself. At that time, Jerry Falwell was still alive and dominating the city, spreading around his anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Although he did not control the school where I studied, he still affected the general atmosphere in the town, which could literally lynch, as in Lynchburg, an outspoken Jewish girl like myself. One of the faculty members placed an anti-Semitic flyer in my campus mailbox, which was full of conspiracy theories, blaming the Jews for all the world's evils, including the Vietnam War. Some of the students bombarded me with anti-Israel messages as well. One student told me to cut the Jewish crap while criticizing me for supporting Israel. In the end, they rejected my study abroad in Israel for political reasons and found bureaucratic excuses to shut down the Jewish Student Association. So I transferred to the University of Maryland at College Park, which had a much better atmosphere for Jews during the Bush years. However, the second Obama became president the University of Maryland at College Park also became a terrible place for Jews to study. During the spring 2009 semester, the Muslim Student Association, led by a radical leftist Indian Muslim activist, who for a while proudly had a photo of Palestinian female hijacker Layla Khalid as her Facebook profile picture, organized the Palestinian Solidarity Week. It featured a speaker named Mari Salakan, who proclaimed that Israel had no more right to exist than apartheid had. Another speaker she brought in was Alison Weir, who referred to Judaism as a ruthless and supremacist faith. During Palestinian Solidarity Week, another lecture equated the Palestinian Nakba to the Holocaust, which is a form of minimizing what happened in the Holocaust. The campus authorities did nothing to interfere with such hate speech being vocalized on campus, but ridiculed and punished any students who attempted to protest against Palestinian Solidarity Week. During the spring 2009 semester, not a single pro-Israel article was published in the local student newspaper, the Diamondback. It wasn't because pro-Israel articles were not submitted, for they were. They just didn't agree to publish them. When such anti-Semitism is permitted to continue to be voiced unchecked in the name of freedom of speech, while the people who protest against hate speech are treated like the bigots, It is little wonder that horrific massacres, such as what happened in the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh and the Chabad House in Poway, California, and later on the hostage crisis in the synagogue in Texas, occur. Although Jews saw an increase in anti-Semitism the second Obama became president and literally sanctioned for the first time the anti-Israel crowds on the far left, which were considered fringe up until that point, the plight of Jews dramatically deteriorated after Donald Trump gave the green light for white supremacists to leave the closet following his horrific remarks after the hateful rally in Charlottesville. So once the U.S. crashed economically following the COVID lockdowns, the plight of Jews became unbearable in America. What was once the golden Medina for Jews is no more. The land of the Jewish poet Emma Lazarus, who welcomed immigrants at the turn of the century fleeing anti-Semitism with the poem, "Give me, you're tired, you're poor," it no longer exists. In the middle of COVID, I went to Portland, Oregon, and saw for myself how Antifa destroyed the United States. At that time, I wrote, prominent American journalist Andy Ngo in Unmasked inside Antifa's radical plan to destroy democracy wrote, after months of coronavirus lockdowns in early 2020, race riots erupted in response to the death of George Floyd. In the name of BLM and with the help of Antifa, rioters and looters torched buildings, raided stores, and attacked law enforcement in dozens of cities. The situation in Portland was especially bad, with Antifa rioters committing an arson attack on the local courthouse and outside the mayor's home. Indeed, the destruction Antifa did to Portland was so bad that it almost looked, some areas looked like Syria. It was really bad. What Antifa did to Portland. The horrific atmosphere created by Antifa also led to a spike in anti-Semitism in the area. I personally passed by a vegan restaurant which waved a Free Palestine sign on the front of its shop. Locals either defended it or were apathetic about it. Later on, my parents, who retired in Portland, Oregon, told me that their synagogue, Beth Israel congregation, was targeted in a hate crime and smeared with anti-Semitic graffiti during this time. This came after a spike of anti-Semitism occurred across the U.S. during the COVID pandemic. During the COVID pandemic, I was part of a webinar organized by Save the West, and it was Zoom bombed by neo-Nazis who proclaimed, "Are you kikes? I hate kikes. You are fucking horrible, man. You own the media. You own everything. When we find you, we will hurt you." This was around the same period of time that anti-Semites also stormed the Capitol Hill and displayed anti-Semitic imagery there. Around this period of time, Antifa activists who were just as anti-Semitic accompanied Palestinian activists in targeting Jewish sites across America. As I reported in a separate article, the American Jewish community is under attack. During the high points of the riots in the U.S., it was reported on Fox News that an African-American man in camouflage threatened to harm the predominantly Jewish Diamond District in New York, which led to the police arresting him. This came after a Jewish camera store in Chicago and 2 Jewish restaurants in the D.C. area were targeted by the rioters. The windows of Bar Chai were smashed, while the Shuk restaurant was looted and even set on fire. Similarly, the windows of a 200-year-old synagogue were smashed in Richmond, and a beautiful piano store in Philadelphia faced the wrath of the rioters, who looted and defaced the musical instruments. Further to the west, during the race riots in America, 5 synagogues and 3 Jewish schools were targeted in Los Angeles by rioters who yelled "effing Jews." One of the synagogues was even defaced with graffiti that read, "Fuck Israel and Free Palestine." A statue of Raoul Wallenberg, the Swedish diplomat who saved thousands of Hungarian Jews from the Nazis, was smeared with anti-Semitic slogans. Jewish-owned businesses and buildings were also looted and targeted with anti-Semitic graffiti. PLO flags were spotted on the streets. The Zionist Organization of America referred to what happened in Los Angeles as the radical leftists and Black nationalists' night of the broken glass. Considering all this, I don't believe America is a safe country for Jews to live in anymore. However, I would like to note that not every country has turned anti-Semitic in the face of the COVID pandemic, like the US has. Since COVID inflicted our world, I had the privilege to visit Azerbaijan 3 separate times, and is one of the few countries in the world where there is zero anti-Semitism. Actually, following the Second Karabakh War, a lot of Azerbaijanis waved around the Israeli flag together with the Turkish flag for in appreciation for the support that Israel gave them during that war. In many places of Azerbaijan, the synagogues are left unlocked at night. For there's no need to lock them because there's not any danger that anything will get stolen, let alone that there will be anti-Semitic vandalism or graffiti at the holy site. In fact, I recently met with the Azerbaijani ambassador, and he recounted for me a beautiful story. There was a Muslim Azerbaijani man in Guba whose wife was hospitalized in a hospital near a synagogue in Guba. Guba is like a Jewish shtetl. It's a predominantly Jewish town in Azerbaijan. He couldn't find a mosque to pray. But the local synagogue welcomed him to go in there and to pray for the fate of his wife, who was in the hospital in the synagogue. And the man agreed. What other Muslim country is there where a Muslim man would walk into a synagogue, be welcomed to pray together for the fate of his wife, who is located in the hospital? It just doesn't happen anywhere. In fact, Azerbaijan has a beautiful multiculturalism policy where every faith, every religion, whether it's Baha'is, Zoroastrians, Judaism, Christianity, receives equal funding, equal support, and equal appreciation from the state of Azerbaijan. And this is one of the things that makes Azerbaijan special. When I was in Azerbaijan, I met local Jews who spoke Hebrew fluently because they went to Jewish schools subsidized by the Azerbaijani government, where they were educated to speak Hebrew. In America, private Jewish schools are something very expensive. The average Jewish kid cannot afford it in America. My parents most certainly couldn't. I did not benefit from that kind of education, went to public school like most American Jewish kids who are priced out of private Jewish schools. However, this is not the case in Azerbaijan. I just wanted to also emphasize that from rebuilding all the synagogues, Azerbaijan, after the collapse of I also wanted to note that Azerbaijan is a haven for Jews seeking a tolerant, anti-Semitic, free atmosphere in a world dominated by hatred and bigotry. Indeed, if I was not living in Israel, I would want to live in Azerbaijan, as the atmosphere for Jews is more pleasant there than it is in the US. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for the speech, and thank you, Aryo. I'm opening the floor for the room for the questions.
My pleasure.
If anyone has a question, please, you are welcome to ask.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Rafael Nabizade. I am doing bachelor's degree in law at the Baku State University, and I have a question like, is there a straight line from anti-Semitism of the Nazis to the Holocaust?
So your question is there a straight line from the anti-Semitism of the Nazis to the Holocaust? There is no straight line from the anti-Semitism of the Nazis to the Holocaust, but in his book, Mein Kampf, and his speech, Hitler never made a secret of his hatred of the Jews and his opinion that there was no place for them in Germany. But initially, he had no plans for mass murder. Only after the outbreak of the Second World War did the Nazi top conceive of the idea and the possibility of murdering the European Jews. The Holocaust can therefore best be seen as the outcome of a series of decisions influenced by circumstances. Sometimes the initiative came from lower-placed Nazis who were looking for extreme solutions to the problems they faced. So there was so the competition between different government departments also led to increasingly radical measures against the Jews. But in the end, nothing went against Hitler's wish, and he was the one who made the final decisions. Thank you. So If there are no questions, I would like to finish our the meeting today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, dear guests, dear ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Aryo.
Thank you. Thank
My
you, everyone.
pleasure. Thank you.